Hey, Mike, how are you doing today?
Hoss, I am doing awesome, and as usual.
Well, I know you are, but today you're going to be even awesomer because we have a special guest going to be joining us. And not only joining us today, but we just signed him to a lifetime contract. He doesn't even know he signed it yet. But no, we've got a very special guest, somebody that I've known for a number of years. And I am really excited to introduce Jerzee Joe. And he is in New Jersey right now. I met him when he was in Colorado, but Joe's going to be doing a show from us or for us, unlike any show that anybody has ever seen or heard. And I really mean that. And basically, the name of the show is The Situation with Jerzee Joe, news and perspective you won't hear on TV.
Hey, welcome, Joe.
Thank you, Mike.
Glad to have you with us.
Happy to be here.
Joe, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you think our listeners would want to listen to you? And what are your credentials and background that provide you with the knowledge and perspective that many of our listeners might not have?
Well, Mike, thanks for teeing that up for me. I grew up in New Jersey, kind of a middle-class, blue-collar family. Started my work life at about age 14, delivering newspapers in the snow at 6 o'clock in the morning. Mowing lawn, shoveling snow. I wasn't a silver spoon trust fund baby. In the summers, I worked my way through high school and college. My grandparents had a cattle ranch in upstate New York. I spent most of my summers loading hay bales onto a flatbed wagon, in 95-degree heat, shoveling manure out of horse stalls, working with cattle, working with horses, milking cows. Our day started at sunrise and ended at sunset. It's hard. So I know what hard work looks and feels like. Decided to become an engineer, working and growing up on a farm, you wind up working on balers and tractors and mowing machines and kind of like mechanical stuff. So I went to college to become an engineer, worked my way through college, student loans, which I paid off, by the way. Got recruited out of college to go to work for a Fortune 50 company in their field service division.
Joe, can I ask you, what college did you graduate from, or did you get your degree from?
It was the Stevens Institute of Technology, which is sometimes referred to as the MIT of New Jersey.
Yeah.
It's one of the top-ranked engineering schools in the country.
That is.
So Stevens Tech in New Jersey, mechanical engineer. Went to work for Carrier Air Conditioning in their industrial field service group, and that's the division that provides air conditioning systems for hospitals, data centers, Air Force bases, nuclear reactor buildings. I've spent time in nuclear reactors. I've been in hospitals at 2 o'clock in the morning when they've had an outage, and I've been there working side by side with our technicians. Wound up, I guess I did a good job because after a couple of years, they asked me to go up and run the entire North American operation for the company, which I was doing. And at the time, that was about a $500 million division, which would be over $1 billion today.
Wow.
And then they asked me I guess I did a good job because they asked me to take responsibility for Carrier's global service operations. And this was back in the 90s when they were acquiring companies in Europe and Asia Pacific and South America. So as we were acquiring those companies, my job was to go work with them to help them transition their service groups from a warranty cost center into a profit center. So over the next 6 or 7 years, I filled 2 passports traveling around the world. I was in communist China, South America, Saudi Arabia, Singapore, Australia. So I've seen a lot, done a lot. I've seen what life is like in other countries.
Yeah.
Came back to the United States, and Carrier asked me to take on a couple of manufacturing facilities and to learn about manufacturing. One of the things I would do was I would volunteer to work the 6 a.m. shift in some of the production lines. So I'd be out there with my gloves and safety glasses working side by side with our production workers, just so I could understand and appreciate what life was like in the production line, which helped me make better decisions in terms of what our employees and team members needed.
Thank you. Great corporations do that. I've worked in manufacturing most of my life, and whenever we needed some valued input, it wouldn't be from the guy sitting at the desk next to me. It'd be on the floor.
Exactly.
But side by side with those people doing a job. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, but I said, look, when we hired you, we didn't just hire your hands and your back, we hired your brain. And we want to take full advantage of your knowledge. So we would always involve our team members when we were making decisions that would affect how they did their jobs. Very great time in my life. But after 20 some years with Carrier, and I was living in Syracuse, which by the way was an awful place to live. My wife and I had my wife and I, we were into horses. We had horses, and one day the phone rang, and it was a recruiter, and he said, "Joe, we've got this opportunity for you to run a company in Denver, Colorado. How'd you like to come move out of Syracuse to Denver?" And I said, "Well, let me jump on a plane and take a look." And what's not to like about Denver, as Hoss can attest to.
Absolutely.
So we moved to Denver in '94 and spent 25 years there. Had a little horse farm, raised horses, did a lot of trail riding. Still continue to shovel manure out of stalls, by the way. Here I was the CEO of a corporation, and on the weekends when our barn guy, had off, my job was I was still shoveling horse manure on the weekends.
Just can't get away from it, Joe.
Kind of like being in radio.
Yep. By the way, I did discover the fortune of how to the secret of how to make a small fortune in the horse business, and the way you do that is you start with a very large fortune, and before you know it, you'll have a small fortune.
Right.
That's right.
That's how you make a small fortune in the horse business. Got a couple of hobbies. I'm a licensed commercial pilot. I've racked up several thousand hours on my logbook. For many years, I had my own plane. I got recruited but before that, by the way, I did start, after that company that I was working for got sold to a big Fortune 100 company. I did start, founded and ran a couple of companies that are multi-million-dollar companies, very successful companies. At one point, I was asked to go move to Illinois, which I didn't want to do. And just about the time I was mulling that over, I got approached by a venture capital group to run one of their companies. And I said, "Can I stay here in Denver?" They said, "Yep." So I did that, and it was a great opportunity. At the conclusion of that episode of my life, these guys were all Wharton Wharton MBAs. Said, "Joe, we don't have anybody with operating expertise on our team. How'd you like to come be a partner in our venture capital group? And your job is going to be to look at potential acquisitions, tell if we think it's a good company to make an investment in, and if we invest in those companies, to work with the management teams to help them accelerate the growth of the company and improve their profitability and grow their market shares." And so for the past 20 some years, that's what I've been doing. I've been one of those evil venture capitalists. Proud to say that there's never been a single company that we've been involved in where we didn't grow the employee base and improve the employee wage scales and benefits. One of the things I learned early on is that your most important assets are your people. And not only do you need to attract good people, one of the keys to success is not only attracting them, but keeping them and keeping them happy. So that's been kind of our business model, attract and retain top talent. And that's what I've been working on. And at the moment, I'm still involved. I'm on the board of directors of 2 oil field services companies in Texas. So when it comes to topics like the oil industry and fracking, and is fracking good or bad, and what is fracking, I am intimately familiar with what goes on in the oil fields. I've spent many, many hours next to an oil rig or next to a fracking operation. So one of the things I'll be talking about at some point, not today, but in future shows is, what is fracking and is it bad for the environment? So that's the type of insight I would hope to share with your listeners.
That would be a great topic to share, especially nowadays when is it worth the venture to do it? What is the cost associated with it? Is it good? Is it bad? You can bring that to light.
I can absolutely talk about that. I can tell people how much it costs to drill an oil well, how long it takes to drill an oil well, and all the other ins and outs. I'm also avid hunter. I probably have more guns than I should.
Is that possible?
Yeah, not in today's world. Wow.
Kind of a say, and my political, where's it political? I like to, excuse me, I'm a kind of a conservative libertarian. I'm a fiscal conservative, but I'm kind of a social progressive. If two gay people want to get married, God bless them. I think it's great. I've not hung up on the social aspects, but I think liberty and freedom. I think less government is better. And
Joe, I have a question for you. I know you're a Mensa member. Could you kind of explain what a Mensa member is and what it takes to become a Mensa member?
Mensa, Mike, for those who are not familiar, never heard the term Mensa, MENSA, is a international high IQ society. It's for people who have an IQ in the top 2% of the population. You have to have an IQ above 150. And it's a great organization. They have a great knowledge sharing. There's great newsletters, magazines. You learn things. I learned it. I think I know a lot, but every month when I read the monthly Mensa publication, I learn new things every month, and I intend to share with the audience some of the things I learned in terms of science, technology. In fact, one of the things I will do from time to time is I'm going to call it the Science Minute, and whether we talk about black holes or fission versus fusion reactions, artificial intelligence. I find some of those things fascinating, and I would hope to share some of the more interesting things with your listeners.
Well, I'm looking forward to that myself.
Boy, I am too. I really am. It's going to be good stuff.
Okay.
The one thing that Joe can do, and I've watched him do it, he still knows the art of discussion and debate. Anymore, the world has become very, very political. And you walk into a room and you announce that you're a conservative and somebody else says they're a liberal. Immediately, you guys don't like each other. You may not know why, but you've been told by CNN or Fox or whatever program you listen to and watch that the other side is evil. And I'm a conservative, but I've gone over to some of the liberal sites, and I know Joe has too. And I know the other side is just as passionate about their position as I am about mine. And a lot of times we say the same thing about the other side and just substitute names. Mm-hmm. And then when we run out of ammunition and facts and figures, we're reduced to calling each other names. And when you get there, you're done. But I've watched Joe on live radio discuss with a guy, not scold him. He was very respectful, but the show host that he was a guest on was very much in favor of gun control, meaning that he didn't think anybody should have guns. And by the end of the show, Joe had turned him around with compelling facts and figures and convinced him that his side may not be the best side to be on. And it was such a beautiful thing to watch. We don't see that very much, and I know Joe's going to get into that during his show from time to time. And the idea is not to argue with somebody, but win them over to your side. And Jerzee Joe's a master at that, so I'm real excited about that.
And Hans, I agree with you. I go on some of those sites occasionally, and I'll put up a very factual. I'll make a comment. Well, that's not correct, and very, very quickly, not every time, but too many times, it'll very quickly degenerate into name calling.
Oh yeah,
right.
There's a saying that is sometimes attributed to Socrates that says, when the debate is lost, slander becomes the tool of the loser.
Absolutely.
Which I remind people of. But if you've resorted to name calling, you've already lost.
Yep, without a doubt. Everybody in the room knows it, but you.
That's right.
Well, It's going to be a fun run. I'm really looking forward to it. I truly am. We're gonna get this kicked off here just within the next couple or next few days, and you'll be able to watch this show on our website. You'll be able to go to our YouTube channel and watch it on demand whenever it's convenient for you. And the show will play at a regular time, same day, every week in, week out. And so you'll be able to listen to the audio just like you would any other radio show. So we have not picked a time slot yet, but we will start advertising that here in the next week or so to let everybody know when to tune in. But Joe, I cannot thank you enough for the opportunity of sharing what you know with us and our listeners. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Right. And also, if I can, just want to talk a few comments about how I intend the format of the show to go. Mark Twain once said, started a letter to a friend by saying, "Sorry, this letter is so long. I didn't have time to write a short one." And I've never listened to, I've sampled guys like Hannity and when he was alive, Rush Limbaugh and some of these guys. And I just stopped listening to them because they would go on for an hour or 2 hours, just trying, the same 2 hours on a topic. If you can't get your point across in 5 or 10 minutes, you're not doing your homework.
Absolutely.
So I don't intend to ever, if it's 30 minutes, I would hope to cover 3 or 4 topics in the 30 minutes, a quick, 5 minutes on this, 6 minutes on that. In addition to the kind of the news of the day and perspective, and when I say perspective, for instance, you'll hear on the news, Republicans voted against bill to save the baby seals. Well,
Yeah.
Why did they vote against? Is it because they like, baby seals being killed? No, that's not the reason. There was clearly some other reasons why they voted against the bill, not because they don't like baby seals. So
right.
What you won't hear is when you hear about, the evil Republicans voted against the bill to save the baby seals, you're going to hear as Paul Harvey used to say, the rest of the story. What was the logic? What was, why did they vote against the bill? What else was buried in the bill?
Yeah.
And it certainly had nothing to do with baby seals. As I mentioned, like to occasionally throw in a brief thing on developments in science, artificial intelligence, the environment. I'd like to include a quote of the day. I'm a big fan of some of the great thinkers of our time, living and dead. I also intend to have a show segment I call Taxpayer Relief Shots. And I think the best way to explain that, Haas, could you play the clip of the sheriff of Santa Rosa County, Florida, explaining exactly what a taxpayer relief shot is?
Absolutely. I'll be glad to do that. Here we go.
Thank you, Haas. All right. So basically what a taxpayer relief shot is, when a private citizen uses a weapon to defend themselves or a member of their family against the threat of serious bodily injury or death at the hands of an assailant or thug, and that assailant or thug winds up dead. As the sheriff points out, if you kill the guy who's been trying to harm you or your family, you've saved the taxpayers the cost of a jury trial, which typically involves a court-appointed attorney for the defendant. If he's found guilty, you're talking about incarceration at a cost of $50,000 to $60,000 a year. He goes out on parole, then there's probationary expenses. So when ordinary citizens legally use a gun to defend themselves, and they wind up killing the bad guy, I'm going to call the good guy with the gun kills the bad guy, you are in fact saving taxpayers money. So I intend to include a segment of like that in my 30-minute show.
I love it.
I'm going to tune into that one. I strongly feel that we incarcerate people, justly so, but we give them too many opportunities through appeal that costs the government way too much money. The people, that's who the government really is. It's
right.
The citizen. It's costing us thousands and thousands of dollars to put these people away, only to have them go through the appeal process when they know they're guilty and they know it's fruitless, they're not going to win these appeals, but they have to abide by the law, and the law says you can appeal. I think that's where we're really extending that law too much.
Well, years ago there was a murder took place here in Phoenix, and the gentleman who got killed's name was Don Bowles. Don Bowles was a reporter for the Arizona Republic newspaper, and it was a mafia-style hit. And they took him out because he knew some stuff that he shouldn't know. And I happen to be good friends with a gentleman who was one of the attorneys general for the state of Arizona, and he was the lead prosecutor on this case. And he gave a presentation one evening and basically had what appeared to be a scroll, but he just unrolled it and held it up as high as he could, and it went down to the floor. And he said, "This is the appeal process. And if everything happens like clockwork, it's going to take at least 10 years to get through the process." Now, there's a time for an appeal and a time for sentencing and be done with it. And, I don't know, our country is really in trouble right now. And I'm very fearful for it. We need so many things to be reformed. We need to get back to basics. And, I know Joe's going to shed some light on some of this stuff in a way that, again, you're not going to see on Fox News. You're not going to see on CNN. They say that, we're presenting you with the truth. Well, maybe what they're saying is, in fact, truthful, but they're not telling you the whole story. Exactly. And so you can put a spin on anything you want to make the facts, sound the way you want them to. In fact, when we typically, not Joe, because I've seen what he does, but when the rest of us go and we want to do our due diligence and we want to fact check something, where do we go? We start off with Google usually, or one of the sites online. And the moment we find a narrative that supports our belief, we feel vindicated.
Right.
There it is. It proves my point.
Actually, Haas, there's a name for that, and it's referred to as confirmation bias. And it actually takes two forms. One, many people will read something outrageous, but because they want to believe it, they don't even bother to fact check it.
Sure.
Then two, on those, for the minority who said, let me double check that they'll glom onto the first Google hit they see that appears to confirm their pre-existing bias, and they'll ignore all of the others. And by the way, I'll talk about confirmation bias, and let me talk about some of the other things that I'm going to talk about.
Okay.
And by the way, I read stuff like that, and I say, that sounds great if it's true, but is it true? And I'll dig through, even though it's something I want to believe. I'm not going to believe it just because I read it on the internet. So
absolutely.
Here's some of the topics that I intend to cover in the weeks to come. One, why is Social Security going broke and how to fix it? Already mentioned, what is fracking? Is it dangerous to the environment? Well, I'm a fan of electric cars, but not because I think they're environmentally friendly. Why wind and solar will never replace fossil fuels power generation, and why nuclear power should. Why the Hoover Dam might stop producing electricity in 5 years. Who pays the lion's share of income taxes in this country, and who is paying almost nothing or less than nothing in taxes? Why did the last assault weapons ban not accomplish what people think it did, and why a new one wouldn't prevent or diminish the frequency of mass shootings? Why high-speed rail in the United States will never become a reality in your lifetime? Who controls the price of a barrel of oil? And hint, it's not the oil companies. Why politicians vote against bills with altruistic names like Save the Baby Seals that I mentioned earlier.
Yep.
Will melting solar ice caps raise the level of the oceans? Hint, they won't. How tiny imbalances between supply and demand can result in huge price swings in commodities. And finally, things like the annual FBI crime report, which I take apart and dissect and talk about who's killing who's getting killed, who's doing the killing, what's happening to violent crime, what impact on murders and homicides have the increase in guns have in this country over the past 20 years. So those are some of the things I intend to cover in the coming weeks.
Cannot wait to get started, my
What a
friend.
lineup.
Yeah, it's going to be
What a
great.
lineup. Wow.
Going to be great. Well, again, thank you, sir. I appreciate the time you've given us today. We are just about ready to go live with all of this, and we've got quite a lineup coming. And I'm glad that you are right now. You're the leader of the pack. I like what you're doing. You're going to talk about some sensitive topics, and that's great. We're not going to be afraid to touch on anything. We're going to do everything in a family-friendly manner. So it's not going to be name calling and the stuff that you may hear elsewhere. I'm thinking about Jack Webb. I think Jack Webb said something about it's the facts, man. Only or just the facts. Yeah. So, and that's what we're going to be talking about. That's what Joe's going to be talking about. So, sit tight, buckle yourself in because this is going to be a great ride. So, Joe, until next week, when you get started, we are going to be out of here. Again, thanks for your time, Mike. It's always a pleasure to see you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And welcome aboard, Joe. We're looking forward to it.
And by the way, if any of your listeners has a topic they'd like me to opine on, I've got an email, which is joe@jerzee.com. And Jerzee is spelled Jerzee, Jerzee, double E. So if you want to send me an email and say, Joe, can you talk about this? Just send me an email to joe@jerzeejoe.com.
And if you disagree with Joe, if you think he's off base, let him know. He'll discuss that. He's not afraid to discuss that. In fact, you may even wrangle yourself a spot as a guest on his show, and you guys can discuss it in front of everybody. So with that said, we'll see you guys next week. Thanks again. Take care.
All right. Take care, guys.
Hey,